Welcome one and all to the No Name Cinema Society. It's our Sound Off. This is our freeform segment. We call it the Society Sound Off, and you call me Jonathan Betzler, one of your hosts. And I'm here in New York City again, as I was in the last episode. Back and forth I go. It's a crazy life I lead, but here I am, and I'm excited to be back with you for our 26th Sound Off, the 26th time we had this freeform segment where we do all sorts of fun things, and we've got a big one for you guys tonight. Before I get started, let's go with my co-host here, somewhere in Brooklyn, a borough away, ladies and gentlemen, Jay Money. Welcome back, Jay Money.
It's good to be here.
How's your last few days been?
They've been excellent. There's been so much that's happened.
So yeah, well, that's great that some stuff's going on in your life. I don't really care, but I'm glad that that's happening. And my other co-host here, ladies and gentlemen, Drunk Davy Joseph. Davy, welcome.
How you doing?
Drunk Davy strikes again, ladies and gentlemen. Here is our evening schedule. We keep calling it the evening schedule, but it is obviously a schedule that takes place over a 2-week period. So this is the end of our segment of shows, our 42nd segment of shows. And right now, of course, is our Sound Off, and we got a special announcement coming momentarily. We're going to recast some of your films from 1966 that we've talked about. And I have to do one of my most challenging top 5s ever. Top 5 films directed by stand-up comedians. And that's based on our indie spotlight, the film Sleepwalk with Me, which is directed by stand-up comedian Mike Birbiglia. So let's get things started with the Sound Off, guys. You ready?
Yes.
It is time to be freeform in a very structured way. That's our Sound Off. And we're going to start things off with a special announcement. We got a couple big announcements, quite frankly. Some very new things happening in the show. One is sort of a variation on an old thing. First and foremost, we're going to tell you a little about what we're going to do with this year's finale. Of course, every year we've got a top 10 of the year, and we've got our Oscar preview. But we also do something special every year that's a very popular show, is we look back at an old year's Oscar race. For example, in 2015, we looked back how many years, Jay Money?
Oh, you threw it to me. 25 years.
25 years, which brought us to what year, Davey?
1990.
1990. We did our famous 1990 in review show. And last year in 2016, how far back we go, Davey?
50 years?
50 years, which brought us to what year, Jay Money?
1966.
Jay Money does math. So if you are, here it is 2017, if you're good at looking at patterns, what does that mean, Davey? We went back 25 years, then we went back 50 years. What are we doing for 2017?
75.
We are going back, 75 years, 1942 in review. We're going to look back at the films of 1942 and the Oscar race of 1942, and that's a super exciting thing. It's going to be really challenging because a lot less of those films are accessible. It's a period of films I know less about, so I'm really excited about that. I've already started the process, but there is a little bit of a twist going on, and that's the second part of this announcement. I think it's fair to say, guys, that, the finale process with doing all 3 shows is kind of overwhelming. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Yes.
Okay. In unison, they agree. However, so, obviously the Oscar preview and the top 10, things we feel like we have to do almost. But at the same time, our 1990 shows and 1966 shows are ridiculously popular compared to the other shows, which is exciting. That's why we do them. So we've decided to bring in some support because it's overwhelming, and you guys can speak to this if you want. You guys are going to bow out of the 1942 in review.
Yes.
Yep.
Do you want to explain some of your?
No.
That sounds just utterly brutal.
Brutal to have to watch the films from 1942.
Yeah.
Oh no,
Yeah.
The films that we've watched so far have been awesome, but anyway, I thought, I was hoping you guys would say, oh, it's gonna be really hard, but I'm disappointed to have to miss it. But
I would like to watch the movies from 1942. I just know that I can't commit to doing the kind of schedules that we've discussed before in the past because it just never works for us. So it's better for you to find people that are actually committed to this project.
So yeah, we're outsourcing, and ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to welcome the newest members of the No Name Cinema Society, Jim Carroll. He is an actor and a writer. He was in my feature film Homecoming and my web series Intersection. And the fun fact about Jim is he is a Jeopardy champion.
Whoa.
Jim, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. You know that Jeopardy story is like 14 years old now. So.
But I mean, like, it's the most interesting thing about you. So that's the kind of fun part. So yeah, Jim, are you excited about 1942?
I am. I'm very excited. I've have the list of films. I'm ready to go through them. So yeah.
And before you came on, Davey was he was not envying your position of having to watch the films from 1942. Davey, I think the word you used was brutal.
Yeah.
What?
No, it is. It is.
The amount of films, or just the films in question that were watched?
The films in question, I think, is his issue. He doesn't like the older ones, especially if there's music involved. But before we get to that, let me introduce our other new member, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. George Roberts.
Oh,
how you doing, George?
Howdy. All good, all good. Nice to be here.
And welcome aboard. George is also an actor and a film buff. He's the frequent winner of our trivia contest at the Golden Globes every year, and usually by a factor of like maybe 4 times as much as the nearest competitor. Jim will sort of like be a less snarky version of J Money, sort of combative and arguing with me, and where George will be sort of like Davey's doppelganger in the fact that he doesn't say much. But when he's soft-spoken in a way, but when he does speak, it'll sound much more intelligent than when Davey does. So that's really what we've got going on here with
Davey.
Wow.
So,
I have to up my snark game now.
and yeah, you want to match the money. So guys, we got a whole rest of our show. Jim and George, I suppose you're drinking anything. We drink while we do this.
No.
Oh, you didn't tell us to come with drinking.
I did forget that part in my primer. I didn't mention that in the handbook.
Next time.
Do you guys want to stick around for the rest of the show? Maybe opine now and then. We'll have a 5-person panel here.
Sure.
This is very exciting. I'm so tickled by this whole process. Both Jim and George have watched a lot of our shows, including our 1906 in Review show. So some of this won't be as unfamiliar to them. So this is a new segment, something we've done in the past, but it's never been its own segment before. But it takes so long when we do it. It feels like it should be its own segment. So, ladies and gentlemen, our newish segment, Recastings. It's a very popular segment where basically we take a look at some of the older movies that we've discussed and put modern actors in them, or suggest what modern actors could play those roles if the film were made today. And today we're going to focus on some of the films from 1966 that we talked about, because at the end of the 1966 in review, I don't know if our new guys remember that, but we had a discussion of what films would we remake from 1966 if we could. And so those are the films that we're going to sort of look at. We've got 5 films that we're going to talk about. 2 of them I'm going to wind up doing by myself because I'm the only one that watched them. But J Money will chime in for 2 others, and there will be one where all 3 of us we'll have prepared some ideas for who might be casting. So I'm going to start with one by myself, and this is a film that I wanted to remake because I found the premise interesting but the movie terrible, and it's I would say a lesser-known film called Around the World and Under the Sea. If anybody would know it, it would be George.
No.
Do you know that one, George?
No.
Even George doesn't know Around the World and Under the Sea. It's an adventure movie with Lloyd Bridges and the Goldfinger girl, whose name is slipping my mind right now, the girl who's actually dipped in gold or painted gold in the movie. Shirley Eaton and David McCallum from Man from U.N.C.L.'s in it. Keenan Wynn is in it. So it's an action adventure thing, but it was so bad, unfortunately. But I like the basic premise, which is there's all these underwater earthquakes or fault lines that are supposed to like set each other off. But they've got this new technology that can ease underwater earthquakes or absorb the pressure of them. Whatever it was, the technology wasn't clear to me, but it had enough mumbo jumbo for me to buy it. They're racing around the clock to go to different fault lines around the globe to place this piece of equipment to stop the earthquakes. Even if it's it's still kind of interesting fun, or it could be. But the movie turned into like a soap opera on a boat because it was really about the romance of the 2 young hot doctors, including Shirley Eaton. From an action point of view, it wound up being really flat. Where my vision of it is something, I love underwater stuff, submarine type stuff, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Das Boot. I pictured something more like that, where it was like adventure after adventure. From each fault line to another, they have one new hiccup to go over, and that's sort of what I want the remake to be. With that said, you know, the roles are so bland, you know, that it was very easy to recast because there was nothing very specific about any of the characters in it. So in terms of the recasting, it was, you know, I just sort of put together a bunch of actors that I thought would be fun to have together that I would like to work with. So that's really my criteria for recasting around the world and under the sea. For the Lloyd Bridges role, who's sort of like a middle-aged, not middle-aged, just slightly younger than middle-aged doctor. His name is Dr. Standish, and he's sort of the leader of the group. I decided to go with Ewan McGregor. You know, I like Ewan McGregor, and I feel like he could be doing stuff like this, leading man, action-y kind of stuff. For his associate, who's a little pissy in the movie, and I don't remember that actor's name. I don't care. He was terrible. I cast Michael B. Jordan, mainly because I think he's awesome and a great young actor, and I would just like to work with him. And in terms of the Shirley Eaton role, who's like this typical female, sort of like, you know, she was only in this movie because she gained fame from Goldfinger. You know what I mean? She's not an actress at all, really. I mean, she was whatever, but she's, you know, she's in this movie and she has nothing to offer. So I wanted to cast a young actress that I think has a lot to offer, and so I went with Tammy Blanchard. And it's someone that you guys may not know. She's sort of obscure.
She's great.
She bust down the scene years ago as playing a young Judy Garland in that TV movie with Judy Davis. She's also great in The Good Shepherd in 2006, but most recently she was in a movie called Tallulah on Netflix with Ellen Page, in which she stole the show.
She's very, very good.
Yeah, and she's very different in a lot of roles.
Yes.
Tallulah is incredible performance. The movie's average, but the performance is outstanding, and it made my top 5 supporting actress performances of the year. And the final role is Dr. Volker, which is a German scientist played by British actor David McCallum, who was famous for playing Russian spy. I don't remember his name on the show, but the Russian guy on The Man from U.N.C.L.E. That was David McCallum.
Ilya Kuryakin.
Come on.
Ilya Kuryakin. Oh, there you go. Thanks. Yeah. Jim's also our resident geek, so he'll help out with those sort of things. So I actually went with a German actor to play the role. God forbid. One of my favorite actors actually is Daniel Bruhl. You thought would be a great choice to play Dr. Volker. And I think that tandem of Bruhl, Blanchard, Michael B. Jordan, and Ewan McGregor, I think that'd be a great, fun little cast for this action adventure. These actors would help me develop these characters a little more.
Around the world.
You looked up Tammy Blanchard?
Also in the Invitation. Yeah, I've seen her in that.
Yeah, that's right.
Who is she in The Invitation?
She's the host woman.
Oh, yeah. She's fantastic.
All right. We're all agreed here. We love little Tammy Blanchard. So anything else around the world and under the sea? No? Crickets? Our next movie for recasting should be a lot of fun because Jay Money and I can do it together. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to recast a movie that Jay Money wanted to remake. It's called The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming. One of the Best Picture nominees from 1966. Jim, and I think you enjoyed it, but you like What Did I Do in the War, Daddy? A little stronger in terms of satire. There was stuff that you could really mine out of a new version of Russians Are Coming, Russians Are Coming. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Well, obviously, once again, it's become sort of a relevant movie for us on a wide variety of levels. You know, it's a quiet movie in a lot of ways. I think it was really bold satire at the time. I think it was really boldly comedic at the time. I think it could be pushed in a new modern way. I think it could be something that they could really kind of turn up the notch on a little bit.
Well, first let me ask our new members, George and Jim, have you seen The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming? I imagine George has.
I have. It's been a long time. I remember liking it very much. In terms of remaking it, Alan Arkin is one of those people, to me, you can't really improve on very often. But I guess if you're going to do something new, you'd want someone...
We'll give him a cameo in that Frampton Fincher part. We'll make
one of those. Yeah, I get that. Like the Kevin McCarthy bit in the remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Jim, have you seen it?
I haven't. I knew about all I knew about the movie. Know about the movie is that Alan Arkin was in it.
Oh, you're about to find out a little more about the movie, and I'm not even going to bother with Davey because I know he has not seen this movie. So, Jay Money, I'm going to let you start with the Alan Arkin role, Rozanoff.
I really want to preface this by saying, I am terrible at this game. I mean, just in general, this is anything having to do with.
I don't think that's true. I think you've come up with some inspired choices in the past.
Performances or actors in general is by far my weakest ability in terms of talking about movies. And I just I have a really hard time thinking of people. I have a really hard time trying to think of any modern actors. So, I think that my choices are all pretty like, I don't want to say they're shoehorned in there. I have my reasons, but you know, I'll be the first to admit that these are not necessarily the best, the most thought out options. But having said that, for Alan Arkin, what I was thinking was actually Oscar Isaac, and I thought of Oscar Isaac.
Good idea. And you know what? That's better than my idea. I didn't think of it.
Now you're just buttering me up. I mean, that's so
No,
sweet.
it's true. It's true. When you hear my idea, you'll see why. But go ahead.
You know, with Oscar Isaac, he's been on all these action things lately, but I mean, he's got a really wry comedic sense of humor. What did he do a few years ago? The Joel and Ethan Coen movie.
Inside Llewyn Davis.
He's proven himself to actually have great comic timing. He's proven himself to really be kind of a soulful character in a lot of ways. And I feel like Alan Arkin's character in The Russians Are Coming is a guy who is kind of caught between these two worlds, and you feel for him. So I wanted a character who was comedic, but also could be soulful and could have some sort of deep, you know, could have the eyes to hold a deep gaze.
Yeah. It's the perfect choice, and I missed it. I really missed it, and I should have seen that. And in fairness to you, I mean, like I meant to do this weeks ago, this recasting, and I wound up having to do it on my lunch break on set today. So I did it very hurriedly. And when approaching The Russians Are Coming, I kind of wanted to cast some guys that it would be kind of different thing for them to do. And I mean, I love the Oscar Isaac thing. He also looks like Alan Arkin a little bit. To some degree, or at least the way Alan Arkin looked in The Russians Are Coming. So just visually, I think I like the idea. I went with I kept thinking about obscure. This is not obscure actor, but an out of the box choice. And I was trying to think of Russian actors because I thought that would be interesting, but I couldn't really think of ones like of the appropriate age. And then I thought, like, what actors that I know of that age that could really do a really good accent and disappear into a role. So I actually came up with Leo. I chose Leonardo DiCaprio because I just thought it would be so different type of thing for him to do. It might be kind of fun that he, you know, give him a real opportunity to do something new and interesting for him, who's done so many things. He's challenged himself so many times. I thought this would be another challenge for him. That'd be a fun one. I figured he could do the accent.
Can I throw one at you for that?
Please.
Now, my choice is older, but he fits all of the praise you're giving the other two. And I love Oscar.
Don't say Adam Arkin doesn't count.
No, I didn't mean him. Mark Rylance.
Yeah.
Mark Rylance.
That's way older than I had in mind.
And I understand that. If you've ever seen him on stage, he's one of the funniest people on earth.
Boing, right? Boing.
That's one. Also, La Bette. And he was Viola in the production of Twelfth Night, where it was an all-male cast. He's really, really funny. Actually, the thing about him, he is whatever is required. I mean, he's really just a magnificent actor. And
for sure. I feel like there's something important about the youth of that role.
You might have a point.
I'm going to move on. We're going to talk about the Walt is the character name, and it's played by Carl Reiner in the movie. So, J Money, what have you got for Walt?
When I was trying to think of Walt, I was basically trying to think of characters who could play sort of hapless but concerned dad-like characters. And my choice is, it's okay. I went with Steve Carell for this. I just think he's the kind of guy that can both emote in a way and also still be kind of funny about the situation. And can
I also went with Steve Carell.
Really?
When you talked about it, that's exactly where my mind went. He'd be perfect for that.
I guess he fits the role then.
Oh, he's perfect. Now I really want Jim and Dave to watch the movie. Dave will never do it, but Jim might.
I will have to go and watch the movie.
Now, the big question is whether he means that the way that Davey means it when Davey says that shit. Davey's just waiting for the Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf conversation to start. He's just playing around. He's doodling.
I put a lot of thought into that.
Oh, good. It's coming. All right, so let's move on because Steve Carell clearly has this role in the bag. So the next question is Maddox, played in the movie by Brian Keith, father of David Keith, who's like the town sheriff. J Money.
Hey,
Sheriff Maddox.
You're definitely not going to have this one. This is by far the most outside pick for me in all the movies we're going to be talking about. But I was trying to think of characters that were both like level-headed and human, not too authoritarian, but could play like the voice of logic and still feel a little vulnerable. And I picked David Harbour. And I don't know if you recognize the name.
Stranger Things.
He plays the town cop currently in Stranger Things. I'm sure he's been in other things, but that's what I was thinking of specifically when casting him.
The Newsroom, and also he's in a movie with my pick called A Walk Amongst the Tombstones. He plays the bad guy in that. David Harbour, I think, is a great actor. I went with someone a little older. Do you have more on David Harbour before I give my pick?
No, you might as well jump in.
Well, I mean, I was trying to think of like a tough guy that I think would have a fun time like trying to do something comedic with this. I mean, like I thought about our movie in episode 4, and I thought it'd be a fun little play on this guy. This guy is a tough guy persona that we've mocked in the past, and I thought it'd be fun to play with that with Sheriff Maddox. the small town kind of sheriff. So I went with Liam Neeson. I thought Liam Neeson would be kind of fun.
I can see that. He's also the kind of, he's injured in a way. He's normal. He's human.
Yeah. George, any complaints?
No, that's a hard one to recast when you think in terms of Brian Keith. When you talked about a sheriff playing with his, shoot 'em up attitude, Josh Brolin came into mind.
That's a good pick.
Yeah, Josh Brolin was the other guy I considered for the role.
There you go. There's some synergy here. The final one for Russians Are Coming. Russians Are Coming. And this I thought would be a fun one. Ladies and gentlemen, Norman is the character name, played by the late great Jonathan Winters. J Money, where'd you go with this one?
I mean, it's so hard. You can't replace Jonathan Winters. I'm a big fan of him in general, and it's.
And I think there's a specific reason why you can't replace Jonathan Winters now that I'll talk about momentarily. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, so the easy route is to say who's kind of a rotund, buffoonish guy that could fill this in a way. Even though that's not really related to those qualities. I think for me, Jack Black was somebody that came to mind. If it had been earlier, Louis Anderson, perhaps. So that's kind of where I netted out on this one. I didn't have too many options, honestly. I
skewed a little older. I mean, the first thing I was looking for, because one thing that Jonathan Winters was considered one of the best in the world at was improvisation, especially within like something structured. He trained Robin Williams in this very art form, not in the kind of improv that you see on this UCB and the Groundlings and that sort of thing. Like a structured improv within scenes, Jonathan Winters was a master. That art form is not. Robin Williams did never really pass that buck to anybody. And I thought long and hard about this. So then I went a little older thinking, I don't know if I was thinking buffoon, but I was just thinking of someone that I thought would have a lot of fun with the role and make it his own. So I did not go with the buffoon. I went with the more drier humor. And I thought Bill Murray would be really fun in the role of Norman.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy watching Bill Murray. He is kind of too old for the role, in a sense.
I don't know that role has any sort of age requirement. I like the idea of Bill Murray being Liam Neeson's deputy.
Right. Well, I think with your lineup, actually, that kind of makes sense to me.
I thought there was something amusing about having an even older deputy. Never rises to the next. I don't know. I just thought that'd be like a fun little twist casting. George, are you annoyed?
No. There was actually somebody I thought of, Jim Carrey.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm intrigued by that. And so much for George being soft-spoken. I guess that one wrong.
Does that mean I have to be the soft-spoken one now?
No. I don't know. It's a whole new dynamic. I just want to keep cutting back to Davey looking bored. That's one of my favorite.
There's all kinds of interesting stuff on my phone. I'm good, man. Keep going.
Well, this next movie I'm going to do on my own because these guys refuse to watch it. Movie of 1966, and I wanted to remake it because to give it another chance to bring some of the things to it that everyone hates about it, and that of course is Hawaii, the film that everybody gets on me for loving. George, you've seen Hawaii, I presume.
Yeah, I actually saw it when it was originally released. Like within a year or two of that.
Jim, I assume you've avoided it.
Well, I just haven't seen it. I feel like I haven't studied for a test here.
No, absolutely not. You guys are bonus. You're doing great. So I'm recasting 3 roles. I'm going to recast the Max von Sydow role, the Julie Andrews role, and the Richard Harris role.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with Reverend Hale, as played by Max von Sydow in the 1966 version. One of the things that we talked about is how unlikable a protagonist Reverend Hale is, and yet he's frequently right in the things that he's saying. It's how he's saying it and the pious way he approaches himself that is so fascinating to me. And I think it's a tremendous performance by Max von Sydow. But I try to think of a modern actor that could pull that off. And this is one of my favorite actors, and I know David's an actor that Davey likes. So I actually thought that Michael Shannon would be a terrific Reverend Hale in the remake of Hawaii. He's got the potential to be unlikable, but at the same time, he's almost always watchable. Makes you believe his point of view. I think he would be terrific. So George, I'm just going to finish with my other ones, and then I'll check in with you at the end of them. Jerusha is Julie Andrews' role, and it's kind of a thankless role in the modern version. I mean, my theory, the reason the movie was successful to begin with is because Julie Andrews was the biggest star in the world at the time, coming off of Mary Poppins and Sound of Music back to back. Anything she was in was gold for the first 4 or 5 years of her career. Hawaii was no exception to that. This is not her movie. This is Max von Sydow's movie, and she's sort of like the loving, abiding wife in a weird way, because it's sort of like almost like an arranged marriage. I went with one of my actresses that I'm really fascinated by right now. It's an actress that I think can do anything, and she was my #1 actress of last year. I think Rebecca Hall would be a great Jerusha and also a great match with Michael Shannon. I would love to see them on the screen together, especially in something like this. And the Rafer role, played by Richard Harris, is a super small role, but impactful. He plays Jerusha's former lover that's jealous, and he's a passionate sea captain kind of guy. It's really about, in casting this role, trying to find like a good foil for Michael Shannon, somebody with gravitas. And so I went back to the well of one of my favorite actors. I thought Mark Ruffalo would be a good sea captain here, and I think he would be a great match for Michael Shannon's Reverend. Those are my three. If I were recasting Hawaii, and I even on the show, I think I told these guys I intend to do that someday. I just need maybe $90 to $100 million. Davey said he would write me that check, although he's muted himself now. So anyway, he's just smiling at the camera. So those are my three actors, and I would love to put these people in this movie. George, anything on that? Any of them?
I have some quarters in a jar for your upcoming remake, if they can start you off a bit.
I appreciate that.
You know, I'm going to say something that might sound weird to you. I like your cast. Well, I would give Michael Shannon the other role and give Benedict Cumberbatch Hale.
Benedict Cumberbatch is a good choice. I don't like him as an actor as much as I like Michael Shannon. I mean,
no,
I think
to be honest with you, I will agree with that. He can be the well-meaning prig.
he totally can, but I feel like when he does that, it's forced. All his imitation game praise, I feel like he missed that performance. He was pushing the whole time. He was melodramatic and over the top. I prefer Benedict Cumberbatch in some of his smaller roles.
Well, but I've seen him do other things where I wouldn't call him push, so I'm thinking along those lines. I didn't love The Imitation Game, but I did like it. But I also, to be honest, I don't want to ever badmouth anyone, actors on here. That's not my thing. But I don't think as much of Mark Ruffalo as most of the world thinks. I think he's a nice, amiable guy. I
used to agree with you until like the last several years. I feel like I keep naming him the best supporting actor of the year, whether it be for Kids Are All Right or Foxcatcher or a Spotlight. Like every year recently, he keeps surprising me in these.
I think you know exactly what you're going to get, and you can count on it, and it's there. He's not a surprising actor to me.
I was really surprised by the depth and poise of Foxcatcher. That performance in particular.
Yeah, you like that movie a lot more than I did. I didn't think that movie ever got off the page.
Frankly. All right. So does anybody else have anything to say about the three actors I chose for Hawaii without having seen the film, like Michael Shannon, Rebecca Hall, Mark Ruffalo?
Rebecca Hall is a great choice for that role.
Oh, good. Thanks.
Sounds good to me.
I feel I need to see the film to make this call.
No, obviously, no. I was asking you about the actors in general. Like maybe you said, "Oh, I think Rebecca Hall stinks," that sort of thing. So obviously, and Jim, you could read the book. You should get off your stop watching.
Okay, I'm gonna write this homework assignment for me. Read
James Michener's book Hawaii, and then we can recast it. All right, so next one for Jay Money and I. It's a super long one. I'm surprised he sat through it. The Sand Pebbles. Another Best Picture nominee from 1966 that we both thought could use an update. I thought because I think it could be better. So we're going to start with Steve McQueen's role of Holman. Jake Holman, I believe, is his character name. Who do you got as your Steve McQueen, Jim Money?
Well, so I was trying to think of actors that could have the same sort of steely, reserved swagger of McQueen. And the guy I kept coming back to was Idris Elba.
But he's so old. I specifically looked for younger actors for this role.
McQueen was 36 when he did this, but McQueen also looks older than he is. I think Elba's right in the right area for this.
From the movie, I got the impression that he was a youngish guy.
I feel like he was more of a seasoned sailor who had seen a lot and was a little weary because of that.
Movie,
I think Elba carries a weariness to him, while at the same time has sort of a steely reserve to him that works from the situation.
Jim, have you seen this movie?
Oh yeah. It's been a little while, but I love the Sand Pebbles.
I don't. But what were you just saying about it?
What? The last sequence with the BAR and the temple. Come on. Just off the bat, when you said who do you cast for this, I immediately think Daniel Craig, also a little older.
And so am I misinterpreting or misremembering this role? Because they were like not peons, but they were like ensign almost.
He was like a pretty seasoned, the chief or
he was a chief engineer, but I still got the impression that like he still had his whole life ahead of him. So I skewed really young on this. Maybe I went I went Ray wrong. I went really young for both him and the female role. So I went with Zac Efron because I think Zac Efron's actually underrated and can do some interesting things.
That is very young.
Because I was thinking like young sailors just in the Navy, and so it sounds like I got this way wrong. Wait till you hear my female choice. I'd put a young couple together because that's what I was imagining. Yeah, I guess I got this way wrong. So George, you're going to tell me the same thing, that he's a seasoned sailor, I guess.
No.
You think he's young too?
Actually, I agree with you. I thought the character was younger, but Zac Efron is a little too young Zac Efron, no.
I mean,
I'm thinking more like a 35-year-old.
maybe we split the difference and do one of the Chris's, maybe a Chris Pine.
It's funny you mentioned that because I initially had Chris Pine and I took him out because Chris Pine I thought would be perfect because I like him better than Chris Evans. In my mind, Steve Queen was older than the character was intended to be. So I was trying to like cast it what I thought the character was intended to be. So I'm happy to go with Chris Pine. I actually had him in there and then I put a question mark on my notes because I was like, maybe too old. I think Chris Pine is absolutely perfect.
Great. I'm glad we could all agree to this. We'll get in touch.
Yeah, okay, so the offer is in the mail to Chris Pine. One more obligatory cut to Davey looking bored. Your time is coming to shine soon, Davey, I promise. Now moving on to Frenchie, played in the movie by the late Richard Attenborough, also known as a director of Gandhi and A Chorus Line and other things. I skewed young here too, so this is going to be pretty interesting. But J Money, what do you got for Frenchie?
I was trying to think of people that could play kind of physically intimidating, blowhardish a-holes, basically. And I got up with Tom Hardy.
Frenchie's his buddy, right? The one that falls in love with the girl.
Yeah, isn't he kind of a jerk, though?
I don't remember that. They're like good buddies and they did everything for each other.
Yeah? You know, I saw this a few months ago.
I don't like Tom Hardy either, so...
I know you don't. That was half my reason for choosing him in this situation.
Just to annoy me. We're so way off on this one. I skewed younger again. And again, you know, comparing him with Zac Efron, I went with one of my favorite actors in this age range. And I talked about him a lot on our top 10 because he was an amazing performance in the movie Other People. I think he can do an amazing amount of things. Jesse Plemons is his name, who rose to fame in Friday Night Lights. In the movie Other People, he's out of this world. Terrific, terrific performance. He's actually played a sailor before in the movie Battleship with Taylor Kitsch, directed by Peter Berg. But Jesse Plemons was my choice for Frenchie. I think he can do anything, quite frankly, and all that Richard Attenborough brought to the table, like force toughness. He gets in that fist fight at one point over the girl, but also like the romantic yearning that he had for the Chinese girl. So I went with Jesse Plemons. Jim and George, anything on the Frenchie role?
I got to admit, I don't remember the film well enough to really say, but I do think Jesse Plemons is great.
I like Jesse Plemons. I think that's I'll go with the great. I'll back you up on that. Great.
Davey does not like Jesse Plemons.
No, I do. I saw Other People, by the way.
I know you saw it on the plane, and it's going to be a second run someday, or it's going to be Indie Spotlight, I think, someday.
Oh, anyway, Jesse Plemons, awesome.
Good. Captain Collins, Richard Crenna's role. I went out of the box on this one too. J Money, what do you got?
Richard, this was honestly the hardest role of everyone we talked about, but I was trying to come up with a guy for this. I was trying to think of somebody who could fill an authoritarian position, but look a little uncomfortable doing it. Something that you're used to seeing as a military guy, but also cannot necessarily be the most likable character. Jeremy Renner was who I picked out for this one.
I love Jeremy Renner. I think that's a really good call. I skewed a little bit younger than that, but not too much. Maybe we think he's younger because he had most of his success as a younger actor, but we guys talked about this actor in a film that we watched in episode 16.1 called We Are Your Friends. And also Zac Efron. That did not occur to me until just now, actually. But I went with Wes Bentley. I think he's an underrated actor, and some of these I'm trying to look for actors that I really love that aren't working enough. Don't forget, Richard Crenna must have been fairly young when he did this. You know, obviously he would be working for another 30 years after this.
I believe he was about 40. I looked all their ages up when I did this, and they were all kind of in the same area.
You spent more time on it than I did, believe it or not. Again, when I was skewing younger, I thought as a captain, it would be a slightly younger captain as well. But not that he's so young. I mean, he's probably closer to you guys' ages.
Maybe somebody like Kyle Chandler off the top.
Sticking with the Friday Night Lights theme?
Yeah. Didn't even think. Where I went to, I was like, who's that guy from Zero Dark 30? Wolf of Wall Street? Well, and then it came to me.
Yeah.
Didn't even think of Friday Night Lights. But yeah, I'm sure I got it from
Kyle Chandler would be great. I like Kyle Chandler a lot.
I could totally see Kyle Chandler in that. That'd be a pretty good pick.
Yeah.
George, you good?
I agree with that. Yes.
Final role is Shirley, I think the character's name is, played by Candice Bergen. We just confirmed that's her name. It is. What do you got as Shirley?
My primary concern was finding someone who I thought was a little wafy, a little blonde, but had the poise of somebody that was sort of classically trained and could be a little bit emotional. And I went with Emma Watson, which I think actually would probably fit into your age range much better than anything else that I've talked about.
Absolutely, she totally would. And I went with similar body type, I think. Tried to look for a younger actress that I thought had a lot of potential that had not been tapped yet. Because this is a really one-dimensional character that I was looking for an actress that I thought could bring it out. And an actress that I don't know if has proven herself that she could do this yet, but I get the sense that she is even though she's being cast in things that are beneath her. I went with an actress by the name of Zoe Deutsch, who is the daughter, incidentally, of Leah Thompson and director Howard Deutsch. And I've seen her in a movie, Why Him, I don't know why I had to see her in that, but she's like the light of that movie. There's these moments when a young actor pops on a screen and you're like, this is not the role for them, this is not the thing for them, but they are showing me something. And that's where I feel like I am with Zoe Deutsch. So I felt like this was the role for her. I don't know if you guys know her or not.
I don't.
J Money's nodding.
Yeah, I'm sort of familiar with her at least.
Jim or George, anything on Shirley? It's not the hardest role to cast because there's not much to the role as written, but
No.
Nothing off the top of my head.
so we can move on to our final movie of the recasting. So it's kind of exciting. This is one that Davey can participate in. So we're about time. And the only reason we're recasting this is a thing that's been redone and remade so many times, but it's also the movie that we all said was should have won Best Picture in 1966. All of us on the panel agreed in that show. And so it's a movie we've talked about a lot. And so it seemed appropriate to recast it here tonight. And of course, it's Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. It's easy to recast in the sense that so many people have played these roles in the past. They're iconic roles. So Davey, because he's been sitting out so long, will get to go first. And we'll start with the character of Honey, as played by Sandy Dennis in the movie.
I went with Emma Stone.
Emma Stone's a great pick, Davey. I did not go with Emma Stone. I went a little older. But J Money, what do you got?
I was looking for somebody a little more girl next door-ish who can look sullen. I went with Ellie Kemper.
I haven't seen her do something like this. Like, I think that would be a challenge.
Definitely, but yeah.
I'd like to audition her first. Like, I don't know if I'd like to cast her sight unseen. I'm intrigued by that choice. I went a lot safer with the role in the sense that I went with someone, an actress that I love, that I also know just played this role on Broadway, so I know that she could do it. And I went with Carrie Coon, who you guys may remember I named Best Supporting Actress of 2014 on our very first episode for her work on Gone Girl. She's also in George's show Fargo.
Superb. And The Leftovers.
So she played this role in the most recent Broadway revival. Because I love her, and she just played this role. It seemed a natural extension. Jim, you've seen Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, right?
Yeah, several times.
Do you guys have anything on Honey real quick? Or any of our choices?
I'll give you two quick choices. I think a safer mainstream choice would actually be somebody like Kirsten Dunst, who I think we've seen could act in Melancholia.
It was a movie we talked about in episode 29.2. That movie Jim and I saw together, actually.
Yes, I think we did, actually. And if you want to go a little bit out of the box, I think you go Zoe Kazan.
Zoe Kazan is coming up in an upcoming indie spotlight of ours. Little hint. George, anything?
Oh, God, mine is going to sound so mainstream compared to you guys. Love Zoe Kazan, though. That's a great... I would have said Michelle Williams.
It's good, but yeah, I do feel like it's almost too mainstream. Would she accept that smaller role, too? Like, I don't know. I mean...
Not that small of a role.
It's not, but I don't know.
It's a four-character film.
Certainly
a small role in Manchester by the Sea.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to Nick, as played by George Call in the movie, and I'll let J Money go first.
Okay, so with this one, I don't think anyone would see this coming, but I was thinking actually Paul Dano, because I was trying to think of people that could play naive, but not
Who is Zoe Kazan's boyfriend? Bringing it full circle.
From Burton and Taylor to Dano and Kazan.
Yeah, exactly. In the smaller role. I think it's a great choice. Davey, what do you got?
All right, I went outside the box here because everything else I picked was pretty safe. I went Seth Rogen. He kind of a little silly. Yeah, so that's what I did there.
That is outside the box, but it's funny that you mentioned that because it made me think of Joseph Gordon-Levitt as a companion for Zoe Kazan. I'm skewing older because I'm trying to match with Carrie Coon here, who's maybe a little bit closer to J Money and Davy's age, so I went with actors probably a little bit older than that, but I mean, like, I love the idea of him going toe to toe with these other two actors. So I went with Edward Norton. Slightly older, but still like youngish looking, and I've seen him on stage too, so I know how he can command a role like that. George is laughing. Did I go too old, George?
No, I'm only laughing because he would be my pick for George.
See, I went a lot older with George.
You would have to if you're going to have Carrie Coon in the film. I'm not knocking that. I wasn't seeing it that way. Yeah.
Wait till you see my George and Martha. I think given what I did with the other ones, I think you'll be pleased. Jim, what about you for Nick?
I do. I love Paul Dano as a choice. Again, I'll try and go a little bit out of the box and go with Donald Gleason, who I think has the right sort of goofy and hookable senses that Martha could just eat him up.
It'd be interesting because, I mean, Nick sometimes he fights back a little bit. Like, I don't know if Donald yet brings, like, the sexuality that Nick brings to it at one point. I don't know about Donald. I like him as an actor. Again, I haven't seen him do some of those things. Couldn't cast him for either Ellie Kemper or Emma Stone because of the hair color.
You look at something like About Time, and then you look at the Black Mirror episode that he was in, and there's a nice little bit of, and even something like Ex Machina.
Again, Jim playing our resident nerd, but yes, I see your point. Are we good to move on to George and Martha, guys?
in terms of Nick, I never mentioned a Nick. Again, I'm being a little mainstream. I have a reason for this, though. I mean, I think Nick really should be the waspy, collegiate, Ivy League, college world, Northeast golden child kind of person.
Ryan Gosling.
Yes, it's exactly. Yeah.
Saw that coming. It's a good match with Emma Stone again.
I think with Michelle Williams.
That
But
too.
one of you mentioned David Harbour before.
Those
That was-
He actually played Nick in the revival about 10 years ago that Kathleen Turner and Bill Irwin were George and Martha.
Right.
It really put him on the map.
So, all right, time to move on to George. And I again skewed older. J Money gets to go first again.
I was looking for somebody that I thought could sort of switch between being weary and sort of emotionally unstable in an interesting way. And I actually went with Michael Keaton for this. I feel like he has a certain amount of weariness to him, but also knows how to play crazy.
I thought about Michael Keaton. I really did. Davey, what about you?
Go with Paul Giamatti.
I thought about Paul Giamatti too, but I felt like some of those lines, and Paul Giamatti went to Yale too. So I mean, I thought about Paul Giamatti, but I felt he was like too nebbish almost. I wanted some of the authority and some of the English of those lines, not English as in British, some of the scholarliness, some of that dialogue. I feel like Paul Giamatti would not handle it. Like I actually
The way I look at it,
thought about him and then rejected him mentally.
You don't want it to be too much original, you know. You don't want people doing just impersonations. So
Fair enough. I went a little older, but I mean, I feel like the most recent Broadway revival was also a little older. And this is wait to see my Martha. I'm excited for this pairing, but I went with Gary Oldman as George, who's one of my all-time favorite actors. And again, I'm skewing much older, it sounds like, than the rest of you guys. He's playing Winston Churchill right now, but he's not that old. I think he's really good. And the Martha actually is even a little older than he is, but she doesn't look it. Anyway, I went with Gary Oldman. I can handle that with his eyes closed. George and Jim, thoughts on those, or if you have thoughts of your own?
I have no negative. Every thought is interesting. You know, this is an amazing play that can be done in a lot of different ways. If there's any question mark about even talking about this, is that the movie is so very good.
And the only reason we consider it is because it's something that is redone almost like Shakespeare.
Yeah. But I really stick by. There were two people I thought of. I stick by Edward Norton because I can see Edward Norton being someone who, through 80% of that relationship, could seem like the henpecked, beaten down husband, and when push comes to shove, knows exactly how to assert his power and get the throne back. And I also think he's a terrific actor who hasn't had a terrific role in a really long time. I think he would be great. Someone else I thought of, only because it's so off the beaten path, and he's someone we mentioned for another role earlier, was Steve Carell.
I think that's a great choice, actually. I think that's. I mean, if you're skewing younger, I'm so far away from you guys age-wise.
Well,
Jim, anything?
I mean, yeah, I guess my choice would be a little bit off the beaten path too. But I think I'd like to see Martin Freeman take the role.
You can see that.
Yeah, Jim playing the nerd role once again. Of course, he wants a hobbit to play George. All right, so now the big one, Martha, and then that'll be the end of our recasting segment. Davey, you get to go first with your Martha.
yeah, I had Julianne Moore in that spot.
Julianne Moore and Paul Giamatti. Okay, so yeah, you're skewing younger. J Money?
That's funny. Julianne Moore was actually a close pick for me as well, but I went somewhere else. I went to Kate Winslet. I was looking for somebody that could be kind of sultry and again nuts.
I thought long and hard about Kate Winslet, but I went even older because, again, my whole cast is older. And matching with Gary Oldman, I went with someone who just played Kate Winslet's mother, actually, in a film from last year. Judy Davis, combining with Gary Oldman in my rendition of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. I should knock that role out of the effing park. I'm just excited thinking about it. Jim, comments on those, or if you have one of your own?
Yeah, I mean, Judy Davis and Gary Oldman are definitely skewing older. I always see Martha as being I see the wreck of her, like the broken part of her. I actually think that, and I thought about Julianne Moore. I actually think this is a role I want to go away from the Julianne Moores and the Kate Winslets and sort of that sort of actress. I want to see Marissa Tomei do it. I want to see her marrying into this.
Marissa Tomei and Martin Freeman?
Yes. That relationship.
The height difference alone would help you with the visual dynamic of their relationship.
She sees the potential in him. That's how they got together. and the fact that he never went anywhere, and it's the bitterness that follows, and that
Are stilts the potential in him?
they have apple boxes. I'm sure they can.
George.
Yeah, again, really great people for all of them. And I love Marissa Tomei. What a great choice. I mean, I can't believe I didn't think of that. I just love her. But I went with someone else who I'm sticking with, Jennifer Jason Leigh. I can't really see anyone else playing.
You guys are skewing so much younger.
Martha should be about 52, 53.
Yeah.
George should be about 46, 45.
Martha's older than George?
Yes, she's considerably older.
And that's true of my cast as well. Judy Davis is older than Gary Oldman. They're like 60 and 55 in real life or something like that.
The balance is not wrong there. They're older than you would read on the page, but the balance between them is not wrong. And they're great actors.
All right, so that's the recasting segment, guys. Thank you very much for participating. It's fun. It's taking a long time, but it's fun with 5 people. We got all sorts of varied opinions and ideas, and Davey even did one, so that's kind of fun. And now it's time for my top 5, one of my hardest top 5s, and I'm going to burn through this, guys, because because of timing, and also it's who knows how interesting this top 5 is. But this is one of those challenging ones that has ever been assigned to me by Davey and J Money. The top 5 best films directed by stand-up comedians. It's a very obscure category here, but interesting. And I watched a bunch of films in order to see if there were more out there that I was missing, including Mike Birbiglia's other film. And the whole reason we're doing this, as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, is based on our indie spotlight, Sleepwalk with Me, which was directed by stand-up comedian Mike Birbiglia. So that's what inspired this top 5. And I decided to make a rule, with the parameters on this rule is, I decided that a director can't appear in this top 5 more than once, because quite frankly, there is one director who would have all 5 films on this list, and you'll see who that is at the end of the list. So what better way to start a top 5 than with a movie called Top 5? Ladies and gentlemen, my number 5 is Chris Rock's film. Davey's not even listening. Davey's muted and just like playing on his phone. I'm doing my top 5 now, and he just doesn't care.
I care deeply.
I just talked about Chris Rock. Chris Rock's 2014 directorial effort. And I don't want to suggest that I love the movie, but it's good enough to make the top 5 given the parameters. If you want to say that I shoehorn this film onto the list just to be able to start it with a movie called Top 5, you might be right about that. But with that said, I found the movie refreshingly honest. Like Keanu, which is a film we talked about in episode, I think it was 27.1, it addresses racial stereotypes in Hollywood. The most successful moments of the screenplay in the movie are when the character does stand up. As a director, Rock doesn't really add that much visual flair, cinematicness. The handheld aesthetic feels tired and overdone, and the cameos are extremely overdone in the movie Top 5. And Chris Rock is what it is. He's just Chris Rock, but I guess for this movie, it's so personal and autobiographical, it's okay. Rosario Dawson's also kind of flat. There's dimension in that character in the screenplay, but she doesn't really bring an opportunity to come to life. Overall, an average to above average movie, but just good enough to sneak in. George is shaking his head.
No, I'm nodding in my head.
Oh, you are nodding. I misinterpreted that.
Maybe I nod my head the wrong way. I don't know.
So you got to work on that. Has anybody else seen Top 5? Real quick thoughts.
I have not.
No.
Haven't seen it.
George?
No.
All right. Wow. Stumped you guys. You've heard of it though. You remember when it came out.
Yeah.
Number 4 can go real quickly too, because it was the indie spotlight that we just did. Sleepwalk with Me is my number 4, and we just talked about is episode 42.2. So you can check out a detailed analysis. My Cliff's Notes version is that the key to the film, I think, is Mike Birbiglia, his charm and his timing. Lauren Ambrose brings a great sense of naturalism and groundedness to the movie. From a direction point of view, they did a great work with iconography, and the great strength of the movie is the dream sequences. Screenplay is very well balanced, combining many different elements together, including a risky element of talking to the camera, which I think worked really well. And we talked about all that in detail in episode 42.2. So I won't ask Jay Money or David to opine further, but George or Jim, anything?
I've not seen the film. So.
Great.
I have, and I preferred Don't Think Twice to Sleepwalk with Me. I like Sleepwalk with Me. I think Don't Think Twice was the better film.
We talked about Don't Think Twice on the episode a little bit, so you guys should go back and check that out. But I did not like Don't Think Twice at all. I think it was more cinematic than Sleepwalk with Me. Like Jay Money and I talked about that in the episode. I think Jay Money liked it better as well. I actually thought the story was kind of dumb and the improv grating. Like some of the actors I found very grating and boring. And I'm so over Keegan-Michael Key at this point, who doesn't seem to be really playing different roles.
I don't know if I can do the show then.
Sorry, man. I've been watching Friends from college. I've been watching Friends from college, and I'm just like, I enjoy every other actor on the show, but I mean, like, he's killing me. I'm just like, it's the same thing. All right, I'm moving on. Number 3, and it's a movie that's really going to annoy Jay Money, but Davey might be interested. Let's see. He's muted himself again. He's sort of on his phone. Oh, now he's back, pretending to be. I'm interested. I'm so fascinated by this top 5 that I assigned you. Anyway, so overall, like, this is the only film on the list that is not actually a comedy, even though it was directed by a former stand-up comic. And even worse for Jay Money, it's a sports movie. And it's not even a movie that was released in theaters. It was a movie made directly for HBO. But
I know what you're gonna say.
It's the best movie Billy Crystal ever directed. 61, which is the story of the home run race of 1961 between Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle.
That was Barry Pepper.
And Thomas Jane played Mickey Mantle.
Yeah.
Those performances, actually, I think, are the key to the movie. Barry Pepper is amazing as Roger Maris, and
Yes.
Thomas Jane is probably his best work as Mickey Mantle. The really
Yes.
three-dimensional portraits that get underneath these sports icons really gives them depth that I did not expect from this movie. And I really want to credit Billy Crystal for bringing those out. And I think one of the more interesting things about the movie is it really explores the way that men, especially macho-type men, deal with intimacy with each other. It's like a very uncomfortable intimacy, you know, as they go through this together. This, you know, thing is supposed to make them competitors, but really, you know, it bonds them together. This race for this record, which to many people may not seem like it's important, but the way the media treats it, to them, it's an achievement, it's an accomplishment of being the best of what they do. So it does have a sense of importance to them. The movie, and again, to Crystal's credit, the movie really delivers in the moments of awe and inspiration, the way that the very best of the sports movies do. And I think the screenplay is really good in the sense that we know the results. You know, we know who's going to win the race and how it's going to happen, but the script really digs beneath the surface to show the struggle of how they got there, which makes it all the more captivating. I also think it does a great job in terms of exposition and information, the way it's dispensed evenly and efficiently without ever feeling didactic. There's a lot of facts to get in there about this story, and they do it without ever losing sight of the character details. So that's why
it's such a human story. I agree with you. I mean, I only saw it when it was first aired, but I watched it a few times back then. It was a very fine movie, and it's interesting that it is a Billy Crystal movie. So it's like, what? That's a big WTF point.
Actually knew Mickey Mantle personally, and I think that's what got him that
He's a
job.
Yankee fanatic. I mean,
and that too, but that's what led to him meeting Mickey Mantle.
61 was great, and I remember it kind of got me. You know, I'm not the kind of guy that cries at movies, but that was a good one.
Wow, that's the first time he's admitted that. Like, he always makes fun of me every time I cry at a movie, but this time,
I
this
do.
is the first time that he's admitted to that.
I do make fun of you for that, and I will continue to do so. But
Jay Money, I assume you've not seen this sports ball movie.
Nope, I haven't even ever heard of it.
Great, Jim. You're not a sports ball guy either.
I mean, I've seen the movie. I love sports movies. The only thing that I will take issue with is that it was Thomas Jane's best performance.
Don't say The Punisher.
I will not say The Punisher. It's obviously his role in the sci-fi series The Expanse, which just finished its 2nd season.
And the Nerd Alert continues.
don't sleep on that Punisher role. That was the best Punisher movie.
All right, thank you, Davey. Lest we forget The Punisher. So my number 2 here, and people might forget that this person was a stand-up comic, but he's mainly known as a director now. But my number 2 is The 40-Year-Old Virgin. And I often say on this show that this is the best comedy of the last 25 years. I'd probably say now the last 30 years. It's been a super long time since I've seen it, bringing us back to Steve Carell, who we talked a lot about tonight, who co-wrote the screenplay. It's a wry, clever, hilarious screenplay, and what I think is special about it is it remains grounded and honest in emotion, despite sometimes getting raunchy or pushing the envelope from a comic point of view. As far as Judd Apatow is concerned, he shows a lot of restraint, which is what his other films really have lacked, and which allows for there to be pace and a style that allows for improv and banter that feels very natural. I think about the chest hair scene where he really sort of allows it to unfold, which is a hilarious scene. And I know they did it for real, but it felt that way. So it felt very present. And the performances, I think, are great. Again, because they feel like real people, albeit some of them with some extreme behavior, but not totally implausible. Steve Carell steals the show, of course. This is one of the first times I think I ever saw Seth Rogen, who David would like to play Nick and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Yeah, I don't even like Catherine Keener that much, but she's great in this as a straight man, sort of to balance out some of the insanity. That's 40-Year-Old Virgin. Anybody have anything on that? I think you've all seen it.
I have not.
Wow.
I've seen it. It's good. I don't know if I like it as much as you do, but I do like it. I don't know that I think it's even Apatow's best movie. I think Knocked Up is funnier.
But Knocked Up is too long and excessive. Like Knocked Up has some really funny moments, but I mean, like 40-year version is like tight. And like my issue with Apatow is the same issue with Tarantino. Is there's no one around to tell him no. Like each one of his films gets more and more onanastic. George.
I have to disagree with you. I also like Knocked Up a lot more. I thought the 40-year-old virgin was like a skit that went on and on and on.
I will take your side, Jonathan. I think the reason that it's so tight is because we're seeing a lot of the bits that Apatow worked into his other films for the first time in the 40-year-old virgin, like Seth Rogen and Paul Rudd improving their way through a scene, and their banter back and forth comes up in other movies. But in 40-year-old virgin, that's where we first encountered it. That's where it was the most solid. The rest of his movies kind of go back to that well a little bit. It's diminishing returns each time.
Interesting.
I agree with that exactly. All right, so it's time, ladies and gentlemen, for my number one. And I think J Money and David, I'm going to give David a chance to guess my number one movie directed by a stand-up comedian here, so you can take your mute button off, man. Because I think you might have a sense of what my number one movie directed by a stand-up comedian would be.
I mean, I'm gonna guess that it's Annie Hall.
Annie Hall is exactly correct, and the obvious choice here. And I think the point is, if I didn't make that rule about each of these having to be different directors, all 5 of my top 5 movies directed by a stand-up comedian would be Woody Allen movies. In fact, we've already done a Woody Allen top 5 in episode 6. And all 3 of us participated in that top 5. So on our show already, this film just recently advanced to the Sweet 16 in our AFI bracket as a number 9 seed. In our episode of Casablanca, you've seen it beat Casablanca to advance to the Sweet 16. It's my number 7 favorite film of all time. It's a perfect blend of comedy and pathos, profiling perfectly modern relationship issues. It's modernism light, I call it, using techniques from art cinema to advance a more mainstream narrative. And here's a good example of how Woody Allen uses style to enhance in substance instead of using style over substance. So it's narrative structure with expressionistic style. It's not done any better than this. One of the most influential films of my career, in my own work, and you can look at my short, One Particular Person, if you don't believe me. We've talked about Annie Hall a lot on the show. We've got some new people. I'm going to assume George, and maybe not George surprised me sometimes, so I'm going to assume Jim's on board with this.
I'm 100% on board with it. You said the magic words. You said Annie Hall, and just like that, Vic appeared.
I missed her. We didn't see her walk in. Is she hiding in here? She's on the side.
I was able to mute the microphone, but as soon as you said Annie Hall, I knew that would summon her.
Victoria is Jim's wife, his own Annie Hall.
And it's her favorite movie. So.
Oh well, there you go. That's all the more reason. Yeah, number 7 for me. George, what do you got on Annie Hall?
I believe I've seen the movie 25 to 30 times. I love it to pieces. You can't say enough about it. I'm happy that was your choice.
Relieved is more like it.
No. I mean, you weren't going to say anything. No, I just love the movie. I'm glad that you like it so much.
Say Money, you don't like it as much as the rest of us, is what you said during the Casablanca episode.
Yeah, I mean, I do enjoy it. Let's just be clear about that. But you guys are raving about it, and it doesn't fall into that category for me personally.
And you should hope that you never have to meet Jim's wife, because she will take you down.
She will.
Punch me in the face, and I deserve it.
We can all agree about that. So on that note, it's time to say goodnight. So he sets me up so perfectly. So guys, first of all, I want to say welcome and thank you to our new members, George Roberts and Jim Carroll. Did you guys have fun tonight?
Yeah, very much. Very much.
See, you get into a rhythm and you don't want to stop.
That's fun.
Hopefully we won't do any 5-person shows anymore, because that is excessive. But I mean, it was still fun. Like I wish we weren't on a time clock and we could just sit drinking beers. This is it, the 42nd set of episodes. We had some big news, new members for the first time ever, and announcing our 1942 interview. And J Money and Davey have been with me all this 42nd set of episodes. How do you guys feel about the 42nd set of episodes overall?
It was awesome.
Awesome. Jay Money?
Yeah, it was awesome. I'll echo Davey.
This has been a real meeting of the No Name Cinema Society, a meeting of the minds, and I officially can say now that this meeting of the No Name Cinema Society is adjourned.